All right, so we got some new polling data that's just come out giving us yet another glimpse into just how disastrous the 2022 midterms are looking for Democrats right now. So here from NBC News, they say support for abortion rights hits a new high as midterm outlook is grim for Democrats. So we're going to get into some of the details here, and I'll give you guys my opinion on all of this, as well as we're going to hear from Chairman Bernie Sanders give his take on this recent data. But starting us off here, they say support for abortion rights has reached a record high, and nearly 2/3 of Americans oppose the U.S. Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, according to a new national NBC News poll conducted after the leak of a draft opinion that would strike down the constitutional right to abortion. So certainly at some level, this is going to be a motivating factor for the midterms, whether it's in motivating Republicans to go and vote for people who are anti-choice, or whether it's for Democrats who are going to be somewhat more motivated to go try to defend abortion rights at the ballot box. Now, there is kind of a question up in the air as to who this is actually going to motivate more so, and I've seen some conflicting data indicating both sides could see increased turnout from this leak that we got from SCOTUS. But they continue here with more details, saying the poll also found that this Supreme Court draft opinion hasn't substantially altered the overall political environment heading into November's elections. So again, it is going to be a really salient issue with abortion rights, but at the same time, it's kind of a wash in terms of who's going to be getting most of the benefit here. But they say with inflation and the economy remaining the public's top issues, President Biden's job rating falling below 40%, and a whopping 75% of Americans saying the country is heading in the wrong direction. 75% of the country thinks that we're heading in the wrong direction. Now, again, there's obviously, it's not a monolith, right? People can say the country is heading in the wrong direction for a multitude of different reasons. There's probably far right, reactionary extremists who are saying the Marxist radical left is taking over the country, and that's why it's heading in the wrong direction. You could also have, a substantial amount of liberals who are saying because of the abortion leak, that's why the country is heading in the wrong direction. Or you could have a leftist like myself who thinks that Joe Biden and Democrats are significantly to the right of the American people, and so they're failing us in that regard. So again, it's not a monolith as to why people think the country is heading in the wrong direction, but nonetheless, 75% is an absolutely wild number, and they put it a little bit more into context here, saying it's the fourth straight NBC News poll with the wrong track number higher than 70%, fourth straight, and the fifth time in the poll's 34-year history where the wrong track number has hit the 75% or higher. So basically, we're comparing the approval rating for the current state of the government with 2008 during the Great Recession and 2013 during that government shutdown. So pretty bleak just in general terms, in terms of how much Americans are dissatisfied with the Democratic control of our government right now. But they continue here with a little bit more information, specifically on the split between Democrats and Republicans. And they say, despite those rough numbers for Biden and Democrats, the poll contains some positive news for the party. Now, I don't really think that this is necessarily positive news, but they say, for starters, congressional preference for the outcome of November's midterm elections is tied. 46% of registered voters say they want Republicans to control Congress, and an equal 46% want Democrats in charge. So the important context in data like this is that even on paper, the fact that it's tied here at 46-46, that doesn't actually mean that the results are going to correspond to a even split between Democrats and Republicans. And basically, because of multiple different reasons and multiple different factors, Democrats need to have essentially a +5 or +6 split over Republicans in these generic ballots in order to actually take a majority in these elections, because of how gerrymandered our election systems are, because of the inherent advantage that Republicans have in the Senate, for example, where states like Wyoming with a population of 4 have the same Senate representation as a state like California that has 44 million people. So there are inherent disadvantages for the Democratic Party that basically indicate that a 46-46 split doesn't actually mean it's going to be split down the middle in the results. In fact, it means that Republicans are actually showing a much more significant advantage than these numbers would give you a picture on. But they also had some favorability polling that they did here on a number of different public figures, and also both parties here. And and no surprise, the Democratic Party is sitting all the way down here at the bottom with a minus 19 approval rating on net. So 31% positive and 50% negative. That's just absolutely atrocious. I mean, even worse than Kamala Harris's approval rating, even worse than Donald Trump and Joe Biden and the Republican Party and even the Supreme Court and Ron DeSantis, etc. So the Democratic Party is sitting at the very bottom of this list of basically the big figures that exist right now, the potential 2024 candidates on either side with Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. The Democratic Party obviously is not doing too hot right now. So the follow-up question to that would be, why not? I mean, I've shown you guys the overwhelming polling data that shows that with Joe Biden specifically and with the Democratic Party, that the majority of the losses that they've seen in their approval rating or favorability numbers has been coming from young people. So in other words, it's coming from people who are to the left of Joe Biden, who see the failures, for example, on Build Back Better, the ability for a single millionaire coal baron senator like Joe Manchin or Kirsten Sinema to completely tank the entire economic agenda of Joe Biden, which was already watered down relative to somebody like Bernie Sanders, who young people supported. So, you see all of these glaring failures of the establishment of the corporate wing of the Democratic Party. And of course, young people are going to look at that and they're going to say, what the fuck are you guys doing for me right now? I mean, obviously you can point to Republicans and say, well, they're not going to do any better for young people, but okay, that's not really a, legitimate point whatsoever, because it, at the end of the day, is not going to motivate young people to show up to vote. So if you want to win the election, you got to go earn those votes. Sitting around and complaining about it and doing the lesser of two evils argument is not going to do anything to actually motivate young people to go show up. So there's a number of different things that Biden could be doing, or Democrats could be doing, to increase their favorability ratings here, but they're basically doing nothing. I mean, if you want to look, again, here, a different poll to give us another perspective on this in terms of the most important issues for congressional voters, you got the economy, basically inflation, and also abortion is sitting right behind it. But what are Democrats doing about either of these two issues? Again, Build Back Better is completely dead. Basically, Biden's entire economic agenda. His peak approval rating was when he sent out the stimulus checks, and it's been trailing off ever since then as the crumbs and stimulus for average working class Americans has been drying up. But in combination with their failures on the economic issues, you also have things like this, like Joe Biden coming out and saying the right to choose is fundamental, but he's not prepared to call for a change in the filibuster to protect abortion rights. So as Democrats are sending out these fundraising emails, right, and they're trying to raise money for the 2022 midterms off of the Republican assault on abortion rights, that's fair and good to call it out that Republicans are doing that, but this is just a fundraising tool for you because the leader of your party, the president of the United States, is openly saying he's not in favor of the one strategy that Democrats could deploy in order to protect abortion rights at the federal level. So just to make this very clear for you guys, in these 2022 midterms, there is a 0% chance that Democrats are going to get to 60 votes, okay? Meaning, in order to protect abortion rights at the federal level, they 100% have to get rid of the filibuster to do it. So you could look at the current situation with Joe Manchin being anti-choice, and you could say, well, even if Joe Biden was pushing to get rid of the filibuster, you'd still have Joe Manchin and he would be opposed to it, so they wouldn't have the 50 votes that they need, plus Kamala Harris to protect it at the federal level. Okay, that's a fine point. I think Joe Biden should be doing much more to try to pressure Joe Manchin and threaten him and force him to fall in line with the party's broader agenda. But at the same time, you also have to recognize that given the fact Democrats are not going to get to 60 seats, regardless of the outcomes of this election, if you take a dream scenario in which Democrats pick up 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 in their wildest dreams, Senate seats in these 2022 midterms, even if they pick up a couple of those seats, they're still going to be left with this same exact fundamental reality that you have to get rid of the filibuster in order to protect abortion rights at the federal level. So if the leader of your party and the president is not openly in favor of doing this thing, then it's not going to happen. So how are you going to go and run on protecting abortion rights when your party is openly saying you are not going to use the one strategy that you have at your disposal in order to protect abortion rights, even assuming that you do pick up a couple Senate seats in November? So, this is the messaging that they're going with. It's completely contradictory and very obviously not going to be very very motivating even for people who do believe in protecting abortion rights and want to vote for Democrats who are pro-choice. You also have, obviously, people like Nancy Pelosi who have been coming out and openly calling for a stronger Republican Party. So I covered this clip the other day, and this is also obviously coming at a time where Pelosi and James Clyburn and other top corporate Democrats are actively campaigning for and fundraising for anti-choice Democrats like Henry Cuellar down in Texas. So, you have the leadership of the Democratic Party that's openly saying they're not going to do anything really to protect abortion rights, even if they win in 2022. You have another leader of the Democratic Party coming out and saying we need a strong Republican Party as we're in the middle of election season. Okay, well, she simultaneously campaigns and helps fundraise for anti-choice Democrats. So, what exactly is the message here? I mean, do Democrats even want to win these elections? I mean, fair question here. What exactly is their strategy in order to motivate young people, in order to motivate working class people to go and fight or vote for a party that is openly praising their opposition? I mean, could you ever imagine in a million years Mitch McConnell coming out and saying we need a strong Democratic Party in any context whatsoever? No, of course he wouldn't do that. So, clearly the Democratic Party here is completely lost in the sauce and just, doing what they do best and representing the same interest as Republicans do, and, not being willing to go to the mat and fight for anything that would materially improve people's lives or motivate them to even vote for Democrats in the midterms. So I think that Bernie, again, had a great response to this. So he did a interview with Chuck Todd here, absolutely atrocious excuse for a journalist, but he did an interview and basically gave his perspective on this. So I want to finish it off here with this clip from the chairman.
Our polling has found 75% of the country thinks we're headed in the wrong direction. In fact, just 28% of Democrats right now think the country is headed in the right direction. Where do you stand? Do you think we're headed in the wrong direction?
I sure do. Look, what we're looking at is a nation today where the billionaire class, the people on top, are doing phenomenally well, Chuck. The middle class continues to decline. We're seeing increased concentration of ownership in America, which has huge impacts for ordinary people. You got three Wall Street firms, Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street, that have assets of over $20 trillion, controlling hundreds of corporations. You're seeing millions of people unable to afford the cost of prescription drugs, unable to afford health care, unable to put gas in the tank. So how can anyone think that what's going on right now is good? And obviously, what I and other progressives are trying to do is put together a movement which tells the billionaire class in this country, whose profits are soaring, who are getting richer and richer, you know what, you can't have it all. We need an economy that works for the middle class, the working class, the elderly, the children, not just the few on top.
All right, so, yet again, no surprise there. Bernie Sanders, 100% correct in his analysis. And, it's not even just about messaging here. I mean, at a fundamental level, Joe Biden allowed his entire economic agenda that was already watered down and already a half-assed agenda to get completely tanked by members of his own party, okay? That's a fundamental reality. And now, basically his messaging strategy for the Democrats in the midterms and also for Joe Biden is to, try to paint this election as if it's about Donald Trump, or to try to portray this election as if, this is about what Republicans are doing, even though Democrats are in complete control of our government and they're completely failing to confront the inequalities, the glaring issues with our economic structure that we have right now that Bernie was just describing there. So, you don't even have Joe Biden going out there and delivering a mildly populist message. I mean, I just saw the other day Biden posting tweets and, making public statements about how he's reducing the debt and the deficit as if that's what people care about right now. Okay, people care about their direct economic material needs that are not being met either by the private sector and their jobs and capitalism failing them, or by the government completely failing to enact basic social welfare reforms to support them in times like, a COVID pandemic and an economic crisis. So that's the reality that Americans are experiencing. Clearly, Democrats not doing nearly enough to support them on either of the main two issues that voters are saying is important to them in the midterms, whether it's the economic situation that families are facing or whether it's on abortion rights. Democrats don't seem to have any coherent strategy whatsoever to turn this shit around and actually fight for a message that is convincing and relatable and powerful for the American people to go support them in the midterm elections.